Hello and welcome back to Wednesday. And I want to start with something that I think is one of the quietest and important skills in professional life. It's not leadership or strategy even, and it's not influence, although we talked about that last week and it absolutely does matter. They all matter, but this one is often overlooked and rarely trained. We're talking about listening, real listening. Not the waiting for your turn to speak kind, but the kind where you're genuinely trying to understand what somebody needs from you in this moment. Not just what they're saying, but what they are actually asking for underneath it all. And we're losing this skill. And I don't think that's an exaggeration. I think most of us, most of the time, are composing our reply before the other person has finished their sentence. We're processing for content, what they're saying, rather than for need. What do they actually need from me right now? And the reason that matters this week, the reason it sits right at the heart of Nina and Aisha's story that we shared on Monday, is that what Aisha needed from Nina wasn't complicated, wasn't even particularly demanding. All she needed was consistency. She needed evidence, the kind of evidence that only Nina could provide, that she was still seen, still valued, and still part of the plan. Nina couldn't give her what she needed because she didn't know what Aisha needed, because she'd never asked, because she'd been communicating in her own language, warm, expressive, high energy, and assumed that when the energy dropped, Aisha would just understand why, but she didn't. And today we're going to talk about why that happened and what to do about it. Welcome back to Unshakable Her, helping ambitious women who are constantly second-guessing themselves to build the daily habits that compound into unshakable confidence. I'm Caroline Esterson and I'm in your corner. Today it's Wednesday, which means it's time for the science of what's holding you back. Because frankly, just believing yourself isn't going to get you the promotion, the pay rise, or the influence. But understanding what's actually happening in your head and why turns what's wrong with me into, that's what's happening. That's how unshakable confidence gets built. Let's go. So here's what you're getting today. 1, the science of why different people need fundamentally different things from the same communication, and why your natural style, however brilliant, is not universally received the way you intend it. 2, an introduction to social styles, a framework that I've used for over 20 years with leaders and teams across every sector. It's going to give you a language for this that you will use for the rest of your career. And 3, the not the club section, because organisations are not designing this gap, but they might as well be, and you need to know why. You ready? Let's go. The science bit, because facts beat fear every time. Here is something the research on communication makes very plain, and it's one of those things that is completely obvious in hindsight, so I want to make sure it's not your hindsight. We don't all experience the same communication the same way, not because some people are more sensitive or more robust or better at reading between the lines, but because we're neurologically wired to process interactions differently. What feels like appropriate space to one person could feel like abandonment to another. What feels like efficient brevity to one person feels like dismissal to another one. What feels like enthusiastic energy to someone can feel like chaotic noise to another. These aren't personality quirks or people being difficult. This is the entirely predictable result of people having different psychological preferences for how they take in and process the world around them. Carl Jung mapped this first, the idea that people have fundamentally different orientations to the world, different ways of making decisions, and different things they need from their environment to feel stable and effective. His work became the foundation for some of the most widely used frameworks in organisational psychology today, including the one I want to introduce you to. Social styles is built on this Jungian theory. I've been using it for over 20 years, and I want to be clear about what it is and what it's not. It's not a box to put people in or a label. It's a language, a shared vocabulary for understanding why you show up the way that you do and why the person across from you is experiencing the exact same situation in a completely different way to you. Now, social styles uses 4 colour energies. And once you see this framework in your head, you'll start seeing it everywhere. So let's look at them in turn. We'll start with blue. These people have a preference for being analytical, precise, and rigorous. They need data and they need consistency. They need time to process before they respond. They build cases and follow the evidence. When things feel uncertain or inconsistent, when the data suddenly stops coming, they don't ask what's wrong. They draw conclusions from what is directly in front of them. And what is in front of them is the absence of information, which their brain treats as information. Aisha from Monday is blue. Then we've got red. These people are decisive, direct, fast-paced. Fiery red people need the bottom line. They need to know what the action is and who's taking it. They don't want to be managed. They don't want to be deployed. And under pressure, they get faster, not slower. They push, they drive. They can read as blunt when they're just being efficient. Now, next up, we have green people. These people are caring, steady. They look for harmony. Earth green people need to feel heard. They need to know the relationship is intact before they can engage with the task. They're the ones who notice when something is shifted in the room before anyone has said a word. And they don't handle conflict well, not because they're weak, but because harmony is genuinely how they function best. Disrupt that harmony and you disrupt the person. And then finally, we have yellow. These people are enthusiastic, warm, and spontaneous. Sunshine yellow people are the ones who fill every room they walk into. They think out loud and they generate energy. They're at their best when they're connecting with people, brainstorming, moving fast with warmth. Under the pressure, though, and here's the thing about yellow people that you don't always know, they can go very quiet because the energy that usually flows outwards has nowhere to go. And when yellow goes quiet, the people around them notice immediately. Because yellow going quiet is like the lights going off. And Nina's sunshine yellow. And here's what happened in Monday's story at 3:15. Nina's yellow energy collapsed inwards under pressure. She went quiet and transactional. She lost her warmth and spontaneity, together with those important connections that her team built their working experience around. And Aisha, cool blue, running on consistency and evidence, building her case from every data point available, looked at the absence of that warmth and drew the only conclusion that was available to her. Something had changed, and the most logical explanation was that it was her. Nina hadn't communicated a single thing she intended to communicate, and Aisha had received a completely clear and consistent message, just not the one that Nina wanted. Not the club, just bad processes. The system's the problem, not you. Let's fix it for you and the next one in. Right, let's talk about what organisations do with this, or more accurately, what they don't do. Many organisations invest in communication training. They send people on courses, teach frameworks. They talk about things like active listening, feedback models, having fearless conversations or radical candour. They make communication feel so complex when it actually isn't. It's really just about opening up a conversation. And they put those same people back into teams after a workshop when nobody has ever been given a shared language for how they actually process the world, where a cool blue and a sunshine yellow are expected to operate as if their needs are identical, where silence is universally interpreted as either professionalism or absence, depending on who you ask. The result, actually, is entirely predictable. Aisha happens. People who are brilliant and precise and quietly essential start drawing conclusions from data that was never meant to be data. And the Ninas of the world, those warm, intuitive, emotionally intelligent ones, are the last to know because nobody told them their silence had a colour, that their energy dropping wasn't a neutral event, or that the way they communicate under pressure is being received in a language that they never learned that they were speaking. This isn't talking about a personal failure, it's an organisational one. Most teams have never had a proper conversation about how each person needs to receive information. This isn't a personal failing, it's an organisational one. Most teams have never had a proper conversation about how each person needs to receive information, what they need where things are uncertain, what they need from their manager that they've never once been asked about. You can't always change the system, but you can change what happens in your team, starting with one conversation. One question asked properly with genuine curiosity about the answer. Because the most influential thing you can do as a leader, the thing that costs nothing and changes everything, is to understand how the people around you need to be communicated with. And then communicate with them in that language, not yours, in theirs. As a leader, the thing to remember is that those with the greatest flexibility have the greatest choices, and that starts with choosing to flex your own communication style to help others and to help you get the outcome that you need. So each Wednesday, we give you 3 questions to ponder on to help you work out your approach. Here are today's for you. Question 1. Think about the people on your team or closest to you at work. Without using the colour framework yet, just instinctively, who needs more data and consistency from you than you're currently giving them? Who needs more energy? Who needs more focus? Who maybe needs more care? Question 2. When you're under pressure, what does your communication style do? Does it get louder or quieter, faster or more withdrawn? And do the people around you know that's what's happening, or are they interpreting it as something entirely different? And question 3. When did you last ask someone on your team directly and with that genuine curiosity what they need from you to feel confident in their work? Not in a performance review, in a genuine, real conversation. And if you can't remember, well, you've got your answer. Write those 3 questions down, sit with them for a bit, because Friday, we bring it home. Okay, so at the start, I made 3 promises for you. Let me close these off right now. I said you get the science. The research is clear and consistent. We're not all receiving the same communication in the same way. And the gap between intention and interpretation is where the most important relationships in your career quietly break down. It's not soft, it's structural. I said you get an insight into social styles. You have it now. Cool blue, fiery red, earth green, and sunshine yellow. You're going to find yourself mapping people onto this framework for the rest of your career. And when you do, when you understand that Aisha's silence and Nina's silence are the same behavior with completely different meanings, you'll have something most leaders never develop: the ability to communicate in someone else's language rather than your own. There's a brilliant read for those of you who want to dig into this a bit more. It's called Surrounded by Idiots: The 4 Types of Human Behavior, or How to Understand Those Who Cannot Be Understood by Thomas Erickson. There's a link to it in the show notes for you. And I said you would get Not the Club. Here it is in 1 sentence. Organizations teach communication skills without ever giving teams a shared language for how they actually experience communication. That is a gap. And now you know it's there, you can do something about it with your team. So looking forward, Friday, Nina goes back, and what happens next is one of my favourite things I've ever put in a quickfire career move segment. See you there. That's it for today. Before you go, if something in this episode made you think, that's why I do that, hit follow wherever you're listening, because that moment of recognition, that's where Unshakable starts. Remember, I'm in your corner. See you Friday.